everybody should be able to free themselves from gender binary, regardless of their orientation. It opens the door for people to consider queerness and gender and sexuality as on a spectrum.
Before we start today's show, I want to introduce you to April Rose Gabrielli. Her new single, Tameless, is a track co-written and co-produced by April Rose Gabrielli and Kulik for an incredible new documentary, Not the Science Type. It just made its debut at the Tribeca Film Festival and follows 4 inspiring female scientists who are changing the world through their groundbreaking work in a field dominated by men. You can dig back through the archives to find an episode featuring April, and go and check out the song Tameless by April Rose Gabrielli on Spotify now. Wherever we're going, whoever we're racing, we're gonna keep riding, we're gonna keep chasing, we're gonna keep growing, we're gonna keep changing, we're gonna keep riding, through whatever we're facing, we will be tameless, we will be tameless. Hey there, I'm Stevie. I'm a musician from New York City and the host of This Next Song's About. If you haven't joined me before, this is a podcast for songwriters and music fans alike. In the podcast, I take you behind the scenes for a closer look at how musicians write their songs, what their career's been like, and I also try to uncover some of the secrets of the music industry with experts from across the country. Today, as we continue to celebrate Pride Month, my guest is Aaron Is Your Friend. Aaron Is Your Friend is the project of LA-based singer-songwriter and producer Aaron Lindenberg. Aaron and I met on the New York music scene a couple of years ago at a Sofar show, and I really enjoyed his music so much, and his energy was just so beautiful, I wanted to introduce him to you on the show. Aaron and I get deep in this episode, and we talk about music releases, queer culture, gender norms and presentations as artists, and we also take a listen to his song Self. This was a really interesting one for me as Aaron flipped some of my questions back on me, so it felt a lot less like an interview and more like a conversation between two friends who happen to be artists as well. So sit back and enjoy with your new friend, Aaron. Aaron Is Your Friend, or the artist Aaron Lindenberg, known as Aaron Is Your Friend. Thank you and welcome to the podcast. It's good to see you.
Thank you for having me. I'm so happy to be here.
I understand I'm popping your podcast cherry, my friend.
Oh my God, that's so sorry. That's so sexual for a podcast right now. I was taken off guard by that.
Sorry.
That's okay. But yeah, no, I've never been on a podcast before. I mean, it's dangerous because once you get me talking, I will keep going until somebody louder and smarter interrupts me. So I'm so excited to be here.
Is that my job?
That's your job. That's where you come in. Yeah.
Okay, I will do my best. So Aaron, why don't you start off by telling me why you chose Aaron Is Your Friend as your moniker?
Yeah, I was going by my full name for a while and it was just not the wave. Like nobody could spell my last name. Most people don't know how to spell Aaron. Like it was hard to find. And honestly, I can't quite remember how I came upon Aaron Is Your Friend, but I just wanted something that was snappy and easy to remember and easy to follow, but also something that felt like, I think I liked that it kind of cut through because it's like sort of disarmingly sweet. It's like, oh, like whenever I tell people my stage name, they're like, oh, I love that. And I'm like, I love that. Like, I love that it gets that, that response out of people.
It is
it
cute.
kind of,
it's adorable.
you know, because it's like when you meet an artist, you're kind of prepared for them to have some sort of like clever or obscure name. And then you're going to be like, oh yeah, like I guess I'll pre-save this band that's called like Leaping Foxes or whatever. But it's like with Aaron Is Your Friend, you're just like, oh my gosh, that's so, hopefully the impression is like, oh, that's so like kind and like, I don't know, like genuine. And I feel like that's where I come from when I'm making
Mhm.
art, and that's how I want my art to hit, is like, oh, it's like
Mhm.
disarmingly genuine and sweet, but also me. It's Aaron. It is a pure expression of myself. I'm not like a pseudonym kind of guy.
Mhm. You definitely succeed with charm and disarm with Aaron as your friend.
Yeah,
Instantly, you're like,
love
"Oh,
that.
who is this? Oh, this is so sweet. Who is this guy? He is my friend.
You're
Okay."
like, do I know this
Yeah.
guy? Yeah. I love that. Charm and disarm. Absolutely.
One question I do, and maybe this is a bit deep for a first question and or a first date on a first podcast.
Never too deep.
Oh,
How deep is too deep?
I was listening
Yeah.
to, I think it was Sarah Silverman, and she made a comment, and I think it was just after the Friends
Ugh,
reunion hit, and she'd made a comment about Rachel and Monica being Jewish characters and being played by non-Jewish actresses or actors.
goishas, shiksas.
Shiksas,
Yeah.
yes. And in terms of that being more palatable for a general audience. And I wonder if this is an appropriate question, but in terms of changing your name from Aaron Lindenberg and what you said about it being hard to spell and whatever, do you think that was to make it easier or more palatable
Uh-huh.
for people? Have you found any negativity towards you in that regard?
Oh, no, I don't think I was worried about not being palatable. I think I was more worried about distinguishing myself and, like,
Mhm.
making a memorable first impression. I didn't realize that
Understood.
both Monica and Rachel were Jews.
I didn't either.
That actually never I guess Monica and Ross, right? Like, Ross very much
Yes.
epitomizes Jewish character, but and I guess Rachel too, but I don't know why I didn't think of it that way. That's funny. I love that. I love, like, super unnecessary it's like the JK Rowling of it
Mm.
all. Like, by the way, Dumbledore's gay. Like, okay, sure. Like, do we need that, you know? Um, but yeah, no, no, no. I wasn't running away
Mhm.
from anything or like trying to conceal anything. I think I just wanted to be more direct.
Mhm. And not to say that you were trying to conceal anything or whatever. It's just in terms of the experience that you were having as an artist and whether that was less welcoming because of that. But clearly, that's not. I've asked. It's not the best question or possibly the best thing to start out with. But it is something that I'm curious about within the art space of anti-Semitism.
No, that's totally interesting. I don't think that I was like, God, I gotta make my name less Jewish. I feel like I must have some bios somewhere that are like gay Jewish songwriter. You like, I'm very much that is my cultural identity to a large degree. But no, it's a good question because I definitely think some people, whether they're Jews or whatever their background is, there's probably like an element of like, all right, how do I make myself more accessible? But no, there was definitely, I wasn't trying to hide my Jewiness at
Mhm.
all. Never am.
But you are an
Uh huh.
adorable gay Jewish boy.
Oh, thank you.
You're very welcome.
Love that.
We're going to talk about your song called Self. We can even listen to it.
Yeah.
Tell me how you wrote it, the story of the tune that came to you and producing it, and how it became part of your album.
Where to start? Well, I wrote it shortly before lockdown, which obviously is super ironic. And I think it was a turning point for me because I was sort of off the heels of a breakup album and I was like sort of not stuck writing in a certain way, but I needed to like process some like heartbreak in a very particular way that was like pretty angry. For me, you have to understand, like, angry for me is like anybody else's best day. Like I'm not aggressive. My angry music is still like very
Uh-huh.
sugary and pop, you know what I mean? But the emotion behind it was definitely like sort of angry and I was processing a lot of feelings. And so when I wrote Self, it was the first time that I think I kind of started pivoting away from that era and started writing more playfully and more joyfully. And even though the song is about I can get high by myself, I can go cry by myself, like it is all about being alone, it is celebratory and it's also musically, I think, super minimal and super like linear in this way that the album was not. The album was, I think, maximalist and sort of all about like layers and things like meshing together. And Self kind of came through as like a very almost stripped, like linear pop song, very hook forward. You know, there's only one verse, there's like chorus, A verse, B verse, chorus, 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 you know?
Mm.
So I kind of was like not trying to write the most complex song. I was just like getting out a pure feeling. And that was what Self was. So then when lockdown came, I was like, well, this is hilarious. Like, I wrote a song about being alone, and I would continue to spend more time alone than I ever want to again. But it was beautiful in that it was like a gift that I gave to myself. I'm sure you can relate to like the feeling of writing something and then it like comes true, or
Yeah.
like you write something and like it almost prophesizes something that will happen later in your life. You know what I mean? It was that kind of thing. And then I made a video that was so it was like just such a pure, heartwarming project, getting all of this footage from friends of mine who lived all over the country, just taping themselves in their own spaces and like putting that together. And the project of editing that video together and getting these takes of friends of mine and friends of mine, like lip syncing to the song, was just like such a balm in a time when I was like so lonely and so like felt like everything had kind of fallen apart. So I have just like the warmest feelings about this song. I just love it.
Awesome. Well, let's take a listen and then we'll have a bit more of a chat about the album.
Yeah.
I can get high by myself. I can go cry by myself. I don't need nobody's help. Yeah. I can be cruel to myself. I can be a fool by myself. I don't need nobody else. Yeah. I can get high by myself. I can go cry by myself. I don't need nobody's help. Yeah. I can be cruel to myself. I can be a fool by myself. I don't need nobody else. Yeah. Used to be scared, but now I get it. Why would I fly? I could be swimming with the fishes. Had it before, I wasn't in it. Now I know it's something that it isn't. Out of my life, but I ain't lonely. Why should I cry? There's plenty water in the sea. 'Cause love can be cruel, yeah. It made me a fool, yeah. I can get high by myself. I can go cry by myself. I don't need nobody's help, yeah. I can be cruel to myself. I can be a fool by myself. I don't need nobody else, yeah. I can get high by myself. I can go cry by myself. I don't need nobody's help, yeah. I can be cruel to myself. I can be a fool by myself. I don't need nobody else,
Here we go, Aaron. Self. I like it. It is so ridiculously simple
Yeah.
in a great way. It's one of those songs where I'm just thinking, that is so simple. It's almost like you're rapping on the top of just that line. And I literally don't know anything about rap, but that's my impression of it. And it's just something that's sort of very simple, keeps repeating, and you go over the top of it. But I love the end, and you sort of manage to even slightly like build a crescendo there, and then have it just sort of come back to just that solo synth line?
Yeah, I mean, when I wrote it, it like kinda I just kinda spat it out. I think I was just singing over that synth line and the drums, and I was just singing nonsense, and then just that chorus really just fell out, and I was like, "Yeah, this is something." It kind of feels like exactly what I wanted to say, freestyling. I feel like it becomes, like, pretty trance-like about, like, halfway through where you're just like, "Okay, the chorus is going, and it's just building and building." There's a point where the chorus vocals all get like very reverby and washed out, and it just kind of feels like you're like sinking into like a bath or something like that. Like it's just like a mantra that I was repeating to myself a lot. I wanted to kind of give that feeling of repetition, like swaddling you and just like comforting you.
Oh, that's lovely. And so you released your album
Yeah.
in, was it March 2020?
I released my album and played my last live show, I think on March 12th of 2020.
So a
So,
week
like,
before the world shut down.
yeah, a week before, and it was such a fun show, and I was so, it was, like, pretty momentous to, like, put out an album, and I was feeling really good about it, and then, like, everything came crashing down, and it was pretty wild.
As an artist coming out with your debut album, you get to do one show and then it all falls flat. That must have, I mean, emotionally, that must have been quite devastating.
I would say it was devastating, yes. But I think it also, in the long term, it was for the best. Everything that I did in the aftermath of it was very much like important self-developmental work in terms of like how I made music and how I wrote songs. It was during that time that I moved to LA and like kicked myself in the ass to like, how am I going to level up here? Like, I know that I can write and sing and produce all by myself, and I know that my music resonates with people, but how can I like really aim for the stars here? So, as heartbreaking as it was, like leaving New York City and starting over in a new place, it was also like kind of a gorgeous kiss off to like be like, well, the last thing that I did in like the world as I knew it, in my life as I knew it, was like prove to myself how good of an artist I can be, basically. It was sad, but it was also like inspiring. Like I was proud of that show, and I was proud of putting out the album. The album's called Break My Own Heart, by the way. I feel like I should plug it.
The details will be in the episode notes.
I'm sure they will be. And Self is from an EP called Emotional that I put out shortly after. Yeah, it was devastating, but I also think that I found like hope in that. And you have to like focus on the good thing even when there's bad things happening, because you could have good things happening and only be fixated on the negative.
Indeed. And thinking about your move to LA, was that driven by a thought or a feeling that the pop scene is bigger and better in LA than it is in New York? What was the driver behind that move?
It was exactly that.
Okay, good.
Yeah, it was exactly that. Yeah, I felt like I had hit a wall in terms of who I was collaborating with or who I could work with that also wanted to make like the same kind of big pop music that I wanted to make in New York. And so I was like ready to start meeting people who are like really, really trying to hit it big, but also like truly love like the aesthetic of pop music. And because I love the aesthetic of pop music. And I think when it's the best version of itself and is like, yes, engineered to like hit the widest audience and like hit everyone's sweet spot in that way, the crossover of like really quality music, really thoughtfully made music that's intended for the widest audience, I think that's like transcendent. And I just didn't find a lot of people in New York who I think shared that view. I have lots of music friends in New York who I admire, but they just had different goals and saw themselves going in a different direction. So it was that, and then also like I just knew that in LA there's more opportunities. I think so far I've found it to be true as well. There's more opportunities to get paid for writing and production. Like I struggled to find those jobs when I was living in New York. Maybe I just wasn't looking for them in the right places, or I wasn't like ready to do that kind of stuff.
Okay. I'm thinking about, writing and pop music and you yourself as an artist in terms of being gay, thinking about the pop scene and obviously Happy Pride. It is Pride. This is sort of a pride question, if you like.
Happy Pride, everybody. Yeah.
Happy Pride. I chatted with Josh Breckenridge on the last episode, and we were discussing the movement of, I guess, the kind of shift that we're seeing in terms of gay male pop artists or pop idols, if you like. And one question I didn't ask him, mind you, partially because I forgot, but also I am curious to see your opinion on it. Do you think that we're seeing a shift in the way that sort of male sexuality is being played out?
Oh, I have so many opinions about this. I love this question. I think that there's absolutely a shift going on. And the first thing that comes to my head is like people are very skeptical, and I think rightfully so to an extent. People are skeptical of heterosexual or, hetero presenting men experimenting with gender and expressing their gender in different ways, like
Hmm.
Harry Styles and the Harry Styles of it all. I'm sure everybody can think of whoever else is also like playing with fashion in
Lil
a
Nas
genderqueer way. And
X.
sure, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Troy Sivan.
And yeah, absolutely. And I feel like, well, I mean, they are gay artists, so it's like it means something different for
Oh,
them
I
to
see. I
do
see.
it
Hmm.
than for like a straight artist like Harry's. I mean, I use straight in quotation marks because I don't believe in, we're all on the Kinsey scale, of course. But I think that it's a missed opportunity to be cynical of that because absolutely every straight man should free themselves. Like we should all free ourselves from like binaries. I don't know if this answers your question. I think there's a other side of this question too, in terms of like queer pop stars being more prominent in culture. But I always think about like the queering of straight artists and straight pop stars and straight movie stars and whatever. And I'm all about it. I'm like, get a stylist who's going to like help you experiment with women's wear and stuff. And I think that I think that's amazing. I think that everybody should be able to free themselves from gender binary, regardless of their orientation.
And when you say queering, you mean with regard to gender presentation?
I think that's mainly it. And I think but I do think that that opens the door for more gray area, and like it opens the door for people to like consider queerness and gender and sexuality as on a spectrum rather than everything being so binary. I don't know if any of that made sense. I clearly had a strong opinion about that, and I don't know if it answered your question.
No, absolutely. It entirely makes sense. And with someone like Harry Styles, there is this sort of assumption that because he wears some more feminine presenting clothes, or sometimes he wears women's clothes or whatever, or he
Yeah.
presents.
And he works it the fuck out.
Yeah, he does. Yeah, he
He wears
does.
the clothes, you know?
And he's so interested in fashion. Like he has a
Yeah.
genuine love for it, and that really comes through. And I was watching something Anna Wintour was speaking about, and I think he had done a shoot for them or something. And it is so interesting that the culture is so heteronormative. Of as soon as somebody goes out with what we know as the gender binary for masculinity, it's he must be gay. And we make assumptions about people's sexuality based on their gender presentation, and it's this
Right.
lack of understanding about gender presentation and sexuality. And it's so interesting to see people starting to play with these things in a way that is authentic to them, but is starting to make some people feel uncomfortable and have these conversations and push boundaries.
Yeah, it's more subversive for him to do that as a straight man than it would be for him to if he were
Mm,
gay or queer, which he might be. But you know what I mean? Like, I think that's amazing. And honestly, I'm inspired by it as a queer person. You know what I mean? So like queer people have been inspiring and inspired by straight or quote unquote straight pop stars forever. I mean, David Bowie is like a queer icon when he is by all accounts a straight
mhm.
man, quote unquote straight man, but what he did for the culture and the way that he expressed his gender was groundbreaking and was inspiring for everyone. So like I think somebody like Harry Styles wearing his gorgeous dresses, and it's not even just dresses, that's reductive. It's like truly just breaking out of the menswear like male pop star gender presentation in even the smallest ways. That's inspiring for queer people and for straight people. And it begs the question like what is queer? Like could everybody
Mm,
be queer? Because it's not just it's sexuality, but it's also gender.
mhm. Yeah, absolutely. It's how you present both your sexuality and your gender in a presentation. It's an interesting point about David Bowie. And I think for me, Harry Styles takes it one step further, is beyond the stage. For David Bowie, it was very much about a character and a stage presence. I don't think we really saw him take it off stage, and maybe that was because it wasn't safe, or he didn't feel it was safe in terms of his success, or whether that was just, not authentic for him. But Harry Styles has definitely taken that off stage, or rather, he's just taking it on stage. It is who he is, and that's where he goes with it.
Yeah, that makes me think, like, what is the stage? The stage extends wherever you want it to.
It does now, but it didn't then. And like when David Bowie was at the top of his game, there was no Instagram. You weren't constantly,
yes.
as you say, on stage.
That's a really good point. I think it's super interesting because then it bleeds into, like, we all have to present. Like, there's no, I mean, there is the option of, like, not presenting and not performing if you opt out of social media, but because our lives are so ruled by social media.
Our lives, our careers, if
Yeah.
you're an artist,
Yeah.
your success as an artist can be determined by how many followers you have.
Absolutely. And there's a pressure there to present at all. And I definitely have struggled with that as, like, an independent artist, and realizing that it shouldn't be just one person's job to help you present. It shouldn't be just your job. The people who the, like, pop stars with, the most followers, like, usually they
Mhm.
have a team of, like, people who are, like, helping them make very thoughtful decisions about how they're going to present to the world, and, like, what they will wear, and, like, that's, like, how they communicate with their fans. So I don't know, it's a whole Pandora's box.
It is. And I think, as artists, when we start to think about releasing anything, even putting anything on Instagram, it's like, what is the image? What is the brand? What is the idea of who we are and what we want people to see? And you can go as micro as that. And yes, it does stress me out. And I'm just like, I'll just post some stories, or I'll repost a few people's, because I'm like, oh my God, what am I going to put up? And I have sort of a love-hate relationship with it. And personally, I started off, my genre was country, and I was certainly trying to fit into like a country style. And I had long blonde hair, and I curled it and all this shit, and wore my Daisy
Oh my
Dukes.
gosh, I need to see these photos.
Oh my God, dig back into the archives. And it just felt really uncomfortable for me. And now I'm like, okay, this is my presentation, and I'm much happier with it. But I actually had to kind of divorce myself from kind of the music side of things to figure out how I wanted to present, what was most comfortable for me. And then I sort of fell out of love a little bit with the country music scene, because I found it so superficial in a way, in terms of that presentation, and in terms of some of the music, what I even found superficial. But then there's kind of an old style, or an old school kind of country or Americana that I've always loved, and that is really about the songwriting, and that's where I wanted to come back to and find my authenticity within that.
I think that's super interesting. Sorry, I just wanted to respond to what you said. I think that's super interesting, the way that you, like, reacted to basically the gender presentation of it all, and, like, the way that the country music industry works. It made me think, like, do we find out who we are and how we want to present and how we feel most comfortable? Does music help us find that out, or do we have to find it out first and then channel it into the music? It's like, is it one or the other, or do they both, like, work in tandem? Like, I think that's super interesting that that was your journey towards a presentation that was more in line with yourself.
Mm-hmm. It's funny how like that journey towards myself has definitely pushed me away from other things. But in terms of country, the sort of straight white male country artist, and the way that his masculinity has to be portrayed on stage or within his music, I think I just find that so toxically masculine. And that is something that really does repel me away from country music. And like, it's country music to some extent
Yeah.
has always been political. You go back as far as like the Indigo Girls getting banned off, from country radio. So it's interesting. It's an interesting genre from that regard. We're talking about you. So Aaron,
It really is.
not at all. This was an
Yeah, sorry. I had to stop. I had to ask, yeah.
No, no, no. It was a fun tangent. I appreciated that. And I was really curious to see what your opinions on gender presentation, and particularly as a pop artist. And there is that beautiful promo shot that you have, and you're wearing these two gorgeous turquoise earrings. And I love that. I love that promo shot. It's really beautiful.
Those were taken by Matthew Martin, who is a fabulous photographer.
Oh, okay. Well done,
Hmm.
Matthew Martin. So thinking about, we're now coming out of fingers crossed, we're now coming out of a very, very dark time in all of our lives. And you've got an album that you want to promote. How are things looking for you in terms of being able to go and play shows? I know that as I've started speaking with artists off the microphone or behind the microphone, whatever you want to call it, a lot of the shows that many of them would do were so far based, and so far really struggled during the pandemic. They actually had paid employees in a number of the bigger cities, and they had to shut down a lot of those offices, or hubs, if you like. And personally, the New York scene and New York artists really kind of relied on that. And now they've sort of got a different model. I'm like, oh, how are we going to come back to this? And also music venues have also struggled. Many of them have shut down. What do you think is going to be your path back to performing?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I feel like everything kind of fell apart, and now that it's gonna be, gonna put it back together. I think it's gonna take a different shape, and I don't know what that is, but I'm like excited to see it. I obviously miss performing live, and I want to do it as soon as I can do it. But I also feel like, yeah, I just think it's gonna look different, and it's probably gonna. I hope that it's better. I don't know. I think so far was a great way for me to develop my sound and to develop my live show and to like play to captive audiences and just feel like I was doing my job as an artist and as a performer. Like it can be hard to feel that way when you're like having to like promote odd shows that nobody comes to, and it's, you're barely getting paid. You're like, it's like so backwards the way that works. Whereas so far is like you come in and like there's people who are ready to like be acquainted with you, and they like are ready to hear you. So that just felt so nice. So I really enjoyed that. But I'm also in a new city with new venues, and I think as LA starts to kick in, I think I just need to start like seeing what's up here. And I have a feeling that I'm going to approach live shows from a different angle out here because I starting over kind of. Yeah, I'm curious your thoughts about like playing live again. Like, are you excited? Are you nervous? Are you like what? You're in Mexico. Where are you going to play?
Yes, I am in Mexico. I head
Okay.
back to New York next week, actually. So I will be back in New York. But, for me, I had a really, oh, I haven't really, oh, it's a good question, Aaron. I haven't really spoken about this. I had a sort of challenging relationship with my music during the pandemic because I think because I had a day job, I had so much guilt around doing anything, any live music or whatever. And I don't know. I had so much guilt around it. I was doing my podcast, so I was being creative. I have another podcast. So I was being creative in one sense. And I kind of gave myself a pass to do music or to write music. And I think with everything that happened during the pandemic, I was like, what do I have to say that is worth saying right now? Most of my music is very sort of broken heart, all of that stuff. And I wasn't feeling particularly brokenhearted about any relationships. And it's one of those, I think sometimes you need to get out of these habits that you are in of writing when you were in a certain place, and being able to write about other things that you're feeling. But I think also during the pandemic, Black Lives Matter was happening. There was a pandemic. So many people had lost their jobs, and I just couldn't dig into anything that I wanted to write about, even if it was for somebody else. I think it's fair to say I was probably in a depressed state and going in and out of it, and found it really hard to write during that time. So I've pretty much taken a year and a half out of writing anything. And in terms of going back, I am very nervous about it. I don't know. It's one of those things. I think I have to rediscover who I am as an artist and what I want to say. So thank you for asking a very difficult question of me.
No, I think I had a very similar experience. I think a lot of musicians went through that. It was kind of like a little ego death, a little personal like dark night of the soul where it's like, well, what am I even doing? Like if the live aspect is taken out, it's like sucking all of the air out of the room, and like I don't know, it just felt like kind of pointless sometimes to be making music. And like I made music and I wrote a lot during the last year, but I also had like a generally hopeless perspective about it. And it was hard. It didn't feel good to make music a lot of the time. But I do think like rebirth has come and like will
Hmm.
continue to come from that. And I think that also like if you take a year off of making music and you come back to like if you're a musician, if you're an artist, like that's always going to stay with you and you're always going to be able to do that. So a year off to like feel what you're feeling and to it's like that's no time at all. You come back in it with like a completely refreshed perspective usually and like what you said like what am I trying to say? Well, what is what role does music play in my life and also like what is my voice? And I feel like I had to ask myself that same exact question over and over again last year. It was tough, but I feel like it's constructive in the long run.
Hmm. But I think you had enough faith in yourself and your direction that you picked up and moved to LA in the middle of a pandemic, knowing that at the end of it, you would come out of it and be able to. And you were in fact working during the pandemic, so you were. I mean, I think emotionally, it sounds like it was a real challenge. But I think it sounds to me like you definitely stuck strong to that belief in yourself, and this is what you're going to do.
Yeah, I think so. I think I mourned my life at first for a good while, you know, like summer of 2020 was definitely like saying goodbye to a lot of things and feeling very hopeless and alone. But then out of that, I was like, all right, I kind of felt like I had nothing left to lose. And I was like, let's give this a try. Let's start over. And starting over is never easy, but it's already worth it. I mean, I think I'm gonna be starting over and over for my entire life. So I feel like it's kind of like my style. I'm not used to it, but it's like that's kind of how I know how to grow and how to live in my life. Is like, all right, let's see if we can reinvent. Let's see if we can start anew.
Taking some lessons from Madonna.
I am in my I would say ray of light era right now.
Okay, love it. that was a that was a classic Madonna phase.
It's
That
the
was a good one. That was
best.
a good
It's
one.
the best. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, Aaron. Well, listen, it's been such a pleasure to chat with you. Thank you very much. We dug deep. I was not expecting to go so deep into some of those topics.
You know, I get deep. I get deep. I get deep. I get deep. That's how I do it. Yeah.
Okay. Well, Aaron, listen, best of luck. I hope you're going to promote the shit out of this album because you didn't get a chance to in IRL, if you like, hashtag IRL.
I think I will. I think I will also have new music by the time I'm like ready to promote things again. So there will be a world of Aaron is your friend tunes for everybody to get into, old and new alike.
Do you have Aaron is your friend buttons? Because I want one.
I have stickers. I have really cute sticker. I'll send you some stickers if you send me your address.
I will do that. I
Yeah.
have a denim jacket that I add little buttons to. So if you ever get buttons, please send one my way.
Buttons is a good idea. I think I'll have to do that for my next merch push. When I rebrand, I need to get some new photos done, but that's a good idea.
Awesome. I'm here for everyone's marketing ideas. Last week, or the week before, I gave Cherise Francisco the idea of a cacao ceremony for her EP release, and I was like, yes. Also because I wanted to go. So yes, here for all of your marketing needs. Aaron Lindenberg, Aaron is your friend. Thank you so much.
This has been a joy. Thank you so much.
I love that. Now you can find Aaron on Instagram at Aaron is your friend, and I've put links to his music in today's show notes. I hope you've enjoyed this episode and this season of This Next Song's About. Now, for personal reasons, I need to take a short break from the pod as I will be moving back to the US. If you've been listening, you may know that I've been in Mexico for a little while, and I need some time to get resettled, so please bear with me. I will be back in the fall with some really exciting guests and how-to episodes. I have some fantastic ideas and guests up my sleeve, and I really am excited to bring them to you. If you want to follow me, you can, of course, do that. You can find me at I am Stevie Mans on Instagram, and of course, the pod itself is at This Next One's About. And if you want to join our mailing list, the link is in today's episodes, and you'll get episode drops direct to your inbox. Thank you so much for listening. I can't wait to come back in the fall for season 3. I'm Stevie Mans. I'll see you next time.